This conference will now be recorded.
All right, everybody. My name is Rod Soto, and thank you for being here today. This is before the last meeting before DEFCON. We have one more meeting, which will be on July 24th, and that meeting hopefully will be a hands-on, so you can prepare for contests such as Capture the Packet or OpenCTF or any other of those contests that many of us hopefully will participate and try to basically test ourselves and do well. And also, there's a channel right now in Discord called Vegas 2021, where most of the information is posted about what's going to happen during Hacker Summer Camp. For those who are going to Vegas, I'm already posting some of the events, so you can register if you want to go. If you're the person that are trying to find who to share, for example, a room with, or it's one of your first times and you need orientation, where to go, where not to go, this is probably the best place to start asking questions. Um, so please, I just placed an invitation in the chat so you can join us at Discord. Our Discord is basically how we keep in touch with each other. There is all kinds of stuff going on, including the job postings, threat intelligence, which nowadays is almost like every day there's something going on. Um, and like I said before, we'll have one more meeting. After that, we will reconvene after DEFCON. And our first meeting, usually our first meeting after DEFCON, is we're going to plan for the rest of the year. Other than that, we have David Probinsky today, who's going to talk about Red Team and pen testing. David is a seasoned professional in pen testing. He's given several talks in HackMiami, including physical pen testing. I myself talked to him outside of our meetings for industry and engagement issues. So he is a person that does have he's a person that does have experience, and I'm looking forward to his presentation today. And without further ado, I'm going to set you as a presenter, and you can take it away.
All right, thank you for the introduction, Rod.
Let me actually find you here and assign you presenter. David, make presenter, there we go. All right.
All right. So it would be this one. All right, so you can see my screen. All right, so can you see my screen there now?
You're good to go.
All right, perfect. Let me just move this aside. All right, so I got, hold on, allow me just a second here. All right, perfect. So as Rod mentioned today, we will be seeing an overview about pen testing and red teaming. I will be going over about what a pen tester is, what a red team operator is. We will be seeing exactly what makes a red team be a red team. I'll also be covering a bit of common pen testing certifications used in the field. We'll be seeing an overview of the scopes, rules of engagements of the pen testers versus the scopes of the red teams. And how they also affect each other on the end goal and what you're trying to achieve within the engagement. I'll also be talking about the common tools and skills required to be red teamers and social engineers as well. And at the end, I'll be finalizing with a little bit of a test case scenario to get food for thought, pretty much. So moving on, who am I? My name is David Probinsky. I go by the handle of 0x Overflow. You can find me on Discord, of the HackMiami Discord, and also different other multiple servers as well as 0x Overflow. I'm a hacker, a red teamer, and also I'm a gamer in my free time. Right now, I have my own company of RedTeaming. I used to be previously in the IT tech roles. I've been since the beginning. I used to be a hands-on IT tech, just repairing computers, all the way to IT director. After that, I just decided I wanted to focus on security. So I am passionate about all things InfoSec, mostly RedTeaming, video gaming, lockpicking, EDC stuff. I love tactical stuff. I have so many equipment for RedTeaming. I mean, you can just ask me on my free time. I am a member of HackMiami, a member of Tool, which is an organization. It's an open organization of lockpickers. I'm a member of South Florida ISSA, and also you can find me volunteering at multiple conferences all over. I've added my LinkedIn link there. If you want to reach out, go ahead and feel free to reach out. And also my GitHub. I am not a developer. I don't write my own tools. In my repo, you're going to find a lot of tools that I actually import from other developers. I do know how to code though. Python was actually one of my first languages. Yeah, if you ever need any sort of reference for any pen testing tool or whatnot, you can reach out to me and I can help you out. So pen testing and red teaming. So I've noticed over the time that a lot of non-tech folk don't really understand what's the difference between the both pen testing and red teaming. I mean, sometimes even people within IT don't really fully understand. They think it's the same thing. So the word red team, it gets tossed around a lot. It's a very addicting buzzword, especially during events such as DEF CON. We have Red Team Village, for example. So the word red team, it actually has two meanings. So one of them is referring to the overall red team, as in the offensive side of security, like the attacking side, if you may. The red team actually comes from the military when they're doing their training, when they're doing the offense versus the defense. So the offense will be the red team and the defense will be the blue team. So now the other meaning of red team is actually referring to the red team operators, which is what I am, or red teamers. So this is a team that actually not only does pen testing, but also does physical and social engineering, which is what marks the difference between a red teamer and a pen tester. So we're going to be going a little bit more in depth on that. So let's take a step back. So this is an example of just a sample. It's not exactly like this. This is an internal red team crew. They might be part of a company, as in their internal staff, or for example, for their internal testing. You might have, for example, within their red team, you'll have the PenTester, you'll have offensive tool developers, you might have exploit developers, you might have reverse engineers. Sometimes, however, it's not often within the same company, you'll have a security auditor, for example. Other parts of that do belong inside of red teams are HackerOne and BugCrawl. Those are actually pen testing platforms. Well, kind of pen testing. Due to the fact, for example, companies would register to platforms such as HackerOne or BugCrawl in order for pen testers to try to find bug within their software, within their tools, within their services, report them, and get a bounty for that. So now you also have the blue teams. In the blue teams, you have the CISO, you have cloud security architect, you have the IT security analyst, digital forensics, incident response, you have information security managers, you have SOC analysts. So that's a holistic view of what a red team and a blue team might be. You also have the purple teams, which is a mixture of the red teams and the blue teams. Now, this that we see here is one definition of a red team. So anything that is within the offensive side of security can be considered a red team. Are these red teamers? Well, no, not exactly. We'll go more into that now. So within the overall holistic view, you have the red team, which is the offensive side, and then you have the blue team, which is the defense. So within the red team, you have the red team and the PenTesters. So the PenTesters focus on attacking mostly software, anything that they can access through the internet or offline if they're actually at the location they're actually testing. Now, a red teamer not only does what a PenTester does, but also takes the approach of adding the physical security and also social engineering, which is the human element. I mean, if you think about it, at the end of the day, humans, we are usually the weakest link. That's usually how everything is hacked at the end of the day if we do an analysis on that. So what exactly is a pen tester? So a penetration tester is a person who, with the use of automated and manual tools, tests for any possible vulnerabilities or attempt to gain unauthorized access to a system. I mean, this is legally, of course. Don't go around doing pen testing without any sort of authorization. So in essence, pen testing is a practice of targeting a system or external or internal networks. It could be web applications, host computers, servers, even mobile applications, in order to attempt to find any possible vulnerability that a malicious attacker could exploit and take advantage of. Now, these pen test engagements are commonly performed for either compliance or a possible release of a new asset on a company. For example, if they're launching a new web application or a new server. Most of the time, within the years of experience doing pen testing, it's not really a focus of trying to increase security. Most of the time, it's actually on a release of a product or to be either compliant or that sort of down that line. So pen tests are usually performed within a very constrained scope on what is to be targeted, and also are commonly performed with a very limited time frame. For example, within a pen test, you might see that the engagement might last anywhere from 3 days up to a week, maybe 2 weeks at most. It all depends really on the scope of the client and what exactly you're going to be targeting. So pen testers. There's pen testers nowadays pretty much everywhere. Any hacker is a pen tester. For example, if you search online on platforms such as Try HackMe or Hack the Box, you're literally going to find thousands of hackers that are attempting to exploit things every day, and they're practicing every day. If you find for people reaching out to, for example, the Cyber Mentor or people at DEF CON or the Red Team Villages, you're going to find pen testers literally all over the place. However, red teamers, I don't believe there's that many out there. Personally, I know a few that I'm actually going to be mentioning within the presentation, but there aren't that much red teamers as much as there are pen testers. So some people wonder if a red team is actually a group of pen testers. No, not exactly. So a red team or RedTeam Operator is a team of trained specialists with the proper ingredients to pull off the impossible, pretty much to get the crown jewels, get whatever it is the company is trying to protect within their assets. So the team must be able to overcome significant challenges, navigate through difficult situations, work together when needed to make the impossible possible. So what this means is that each member should have a unique and complementary skill, meaning that each member can function as a subject matter of an expert on his or her own, and combine the individual expertise with the collective knowledge of the team to pull off the equivalent of a real threat or an adversary. So to give an example, I don't know if some of you have actually watched this movie. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I'm not going to spoil it for you. So Ocean's 12, where you actually have George Clooney and you have a couple of other people as well. It's a movie that deals about a heist where you actually have a team. So it's a team of con artists, which some of our con artists are actually thieves, and each with their own unique skills. So you have the guy that hacks into the cameras, also intercepts a calls whenever the business is actually calling the cops. Hey, we have a threat in here. There are team members who actually dress up in order to blend in and perform specific tasks. So those would be social engineering. And of course, the overall heist is overcoming all the security measures that they have in place. So if you ask me if this kind of is like red teaming, in a way, not exactly, but in a way. Now, within the movie, you also have another bad guy, which is called the Night Fox, which is another con artist and thief. However, he works solo, not in a team. So in a way, he's not really a red teamer. I would consider it more of a solo PenTester in a way. So what makes the difference between PenTesting and red teaming? So the three key elements, there is a hidden fourth. The three key elements that separates the red team between a PenTester is the aspect of cyber, which is hacking, for example, endpoints, servers, networks, web apps, anything that you can hack into or get into from behind a computer remotely from the internet. So nothing that requires your physical presence. So what other things actually make a red teamer would be the physical aspect, such as being able to bypass or hack security cameras, alarms, locks, doors, gates, fences, anything that would require your physical presence. That's done by a red teamer, not a PenTester. And finally, the third element, which is the human aspect, would be social engineering. This could be, for example, social engineering the employees, could be phishing, could be vishing, and even social engineering third parties related to the employees, such as family members, such as social engineering or phishing a company that supplies product to the main organization that you're trying to attack. So all of these would compromise, would be part of a red teamer. So the other key element that I actually didn't mention here is another difference between the PenTesters and the red teamers is that PenTesters, when they're hired for the engagement, they do their reconnaissance, they do their hacking, they do their exploitation, they do the report, and they provide the report. Now, a red teamer does similar, as in does the reconnaissance, does the exploitation, gains access, does a report. But the difference between a PenTester and a red teamer is that a red teamer usually would also, after providing the report, will work hand in hand with their internal operation team to actually fix whatever it was found. It wouldn't just like, oh, here's the report, okay, bye-bye, you're done, fix it. No, it doesn't work that way. So a red teamer would actually stay behind and actually help the company to improve their security on whatever it is that they found, how they could fix it, what are the possible solutions and whatnot. So a little bit on PenTesting certifications. I pulled up this pretty nice chart from this website, pauljeremy.com. There's a lot of certifications there, depending on the route that you're taking. For example, security and risk management, or if you're going through network security, or if you're going to PenTesting. I mean, heck, there's a lot of certifications there. Some of them I haven't even heard of in my life. Some common well-known certs for PenTesting are CEH, you got the PenTest Plus, the OSCP, OSEP, the GPAN, the LPT. Now, all of these are for PenTesters. They're commonly required. For example, if you're applying to a job and HR is requiring certifications for you to be a PenTester with them, chances are they're going to be requiring at least one or two of these. Now, if you consider certifications for PenTesting versus certifications for red team operators, to be honest, there's barely any, if any at all. I did find that there is a certification for a red team operator from Red Team Alliance. I left the link below on the presentation. You can actually check it out. They actually have a course on teaching you all aspects of physical security and red team operating. And once you complete the course and pass the certificate, the exam, they can actually provide you with the certification. So that's pretty much the only one that I've seen. Most red teamers out there that I'm aware of don't really have a red team operator certification because it has to do with physical security and social engineering. If you think about it, for social engineering, deceiving people, lying to people, getting your way physically into places where you're not supposed to be, there isn't really an institution that trains you how to do that. And even more, there's not going to be a certification on that kind of things. So moving on to the scope between pen testing and red teaming. So for example, here on the left, we can see the common scope for a pen tester. We can see the external network, which could be either a URL, could be external IPs, could be in a complete range. It all depends on what the clients have for the external network. It could be their internal network, could be servers inside of the network. It could be internal web applications, could be mobile applications. It could be cloud as well. For example, if they're using Azure or AWS, it all depends on the client and whatnot. I did include phishing in the pen testing as a thing that pen testers commonly do. It's not that common. I would honestly think that if you want an effective phishing campaign, it would be towards more of a red teaming because of the time that it usually takes and IoT. So a little bit more on that phishing. I did put it on the pen testing. For example, if you have a client or a customer that asks you, hey, can you do a phishing campaign? If you want to set up a phishing server, you can literally do it within a couple of hours. So you just have to get a VPS, such as one on DigitalOcean or AWS. And within a couple of hours, you can have a phishing server. But here's the thing, within phishing, if you're doing it as a pen testing, chances are because of the scope that you have, which is usually just a couple of days, versus a RedTeamer, which might have a couple of weeks or even months, chances are when you create the phishing server, it's going to land in the spam folder like immediately. Because when you're red teaming, if you're doing phishing properly how you want to, you're going to be doing a phishing server. You're going to be purchasing the domain. You're going to be setting up SPF, DKIM. You're going to be setting up your DMARC records, and then you're going to propagate and use the email accounts for that server to be sending emails back and forth for at least a couple of weeks, just so that there's actually activity and it doesn't land on the spam filters. So that's why I think it's not really a pen testing thing, and that's why I consider phishing as strategic and ideal phishing would be performed by RedTeamer, not a pen tester. So now red teaming. So red teaming is everything that we see on the pen testing side, but also including the red teaming aspects, such as the human element, which is social engineering. You have OSINTs, which you're doing it not only to the company you're attacking, but also into the supply chain or even third parties. For example, you might be doing OSINT social engineering into family members of a CEO, or into OSINT into a company that supplies bathroom products for the building that you're trying to get into. So all that is part of red teaming, not pen testing. You also have phishing. You also have wireless Wi-Fi attacks, which that would require your physical presence. That's not something you can do from another country. You have RFID and access control, which also would require your physical presence. You also have lock picking, lock bypassing as well. And you also have physical implants and attacks, such as using, for example, the USB rubber ducky from Hack5, or using a USB ESP32 if you create it yourself. You also have keyloggers as well that you can actually implant. So yeah, the physical implants, that will be part of red teaming, not pen testing. So rules of engagement. So usually as a pen tester, you have rules of things that you're allowed and you're not allowed to do. One of the most common ones is you're not allowed to do a DDoS. You might have, for example, specific IPs to target, not always everything on the network. Like, let's say your client might have a network, separated network internally, that they might have the servers on one subnet, they might have hosts on another subnet, and they might ask you to only attack the servers, not the endpoints. That's one example. It could be specific URLs. For example, they might have a web application that is in production, and they may have another which is a demo. They might ask you to attack the demo and not the one in production. Also, another thing in rules of engagement is, for example, pen testing versus red teaming, is that in pen testing, usually if you're doing an internal pen test, chances are the client is actually going to provide you with credentials for a VPN access, so you can actually do the pen test for the internal side. a red teamer would actually have to spend the time into phishing, trying to collect the credentials in order to gain access to the network, and then from there pivot on. As I mentioned, a VPN connection is usually provided for internal testing. Another thing that you'll see commonly is that, for example, they might say, okay, since during the day we're working, we only want you to attack our internal network or external network between 6 p.m. and 3 a.m. It can be only done over the weekends, or it can't be done on the 15th of each month because we push updates. It can be different reasons. It all varies depending on the client. And also within PenTesting versus RedTeaming, since you have a very limited time for engagement, not always you're gonna achieve a compromised target. It all varies depending on what's the scope and what are the constraints and what's the limitations that you have with the engagement. So if you ask me which one is better between the red teaming and PenTesting, I would definitely say that red teaming is a more besides a more physical approach, it's a more hands-on. It's more of a real threat case scenario versus a pen testing, because in the pen testing you have so many constraints and so many things you have to bypass. Within the physical or red teaming, you have to think outside the box. You have to think of things that normally are not the common way of pen testing and engagement in an attacking scenario. For example, you'll have an enterprise that have so many security measures implemented on their company that it makes it pretty hard to actually get in, but physically you can actually bypass a couple of blocks and actually get in and physically walk out with their server. Like I've had engagement that I could have like easily just go into the bit like, okay, a quick story here. So one time I actually had a physical engagement where the client, they actually even had port monitoring and implemented. Like they had so many security things in place that it was ridiculous. But turns out that they actually had two different locations. One was in a main facility where they even had an alarms and whatnot, and they had another facility which was in a shared office space and wasn't that really secure. And we were able to, me and my team were able to gain access into the building and pop open a couple of doors, and we literally had access to everything in that building. So sometimes not everything that you do in cyber, as in controls and security stuff, can guarantee that you're 100% safe. So you also have to consider the physical aspect of things. So here's a sample PenTest methodology. It's not exactly like this. I just made it up. Well, not made it up, but you have an idea. So you have reconnaissance, you have enumeration, you have exploitation, escalation, lateral movement, you have pawn and reporting. So here's the thing. What happens if with the reconnaissance phase? You're doing your port scan, your reconnaissance into the external IP of a company. It turns out that they have no external facing web applications. They have only one public IP, which is actually for internal use, and there's literally nothing running on it. So you pretty much have a block in this spot right here. So after here, if you're pen testing, what are you gonna do? You can't find anything, so that's it. You're stuck there. You're not gonna be able to hack the company. Well, actually, no. That's what makes the difference between a pen tester and a red teamer. The red teamer would actually think outside the box, would do reconnaissance on the company, would see actually who are the employees, would try to target people related to the employees. Could be family members, could be friends, it could be many different things. You could actually do reconnaissance on the building where the facility is, you know, check Google Maps, see what the building looks like, or actually go on site, see how's their physical security. And another thing to consider is that pen testing versus red teaming. Pen testing, yeah, you can do it pretty much anywhere from any part of the world. All you need is a computer and internet. For red teaming, you actually have to have physical access to at least one of the locations of the company that you're actually trying to target. So as I mentioned, pen testing can be performed from any location. It doesn't require physical presence, but red teaming does require travel, as physical and social engineering does require a physical presence. So in pen testing, you could be doing a pen testing any company, which can vary from a mom and pop shop all the way to a big Fortune 500 company. It all varies. Now, for the red team engagements, usually you're not going to be doing those to small businesses. That's usually focused to bigger companies. In my opinion, red teaming it has a large focus on the industrial stuff. Like, for example, you'll have power plants, you'll have nuclear plants, you have oil refineries, you have gas plants. Anything that has to do with IoT, could be SCADA, could be ICS, industrial control systems. Anything within this aspect of these companies would be usually targeted by a red team operator, because what a red team operator is trying to emulate as much as possible a real threat scenario. So all these sample picks are from industrial facilities, which all of these are actually all over the world, and a lot of them in remote and unsecure locations, since companies think that nobody would go there. For example, you'll find one of these in the middle of nowhere with maybe 1 or 2 employees that might rotate. Heck, I mean, some of these don't even have staff on site. You just drive by and physical pen test your way in. So a real attacker wouldn't try to go through the main gates of the company where the security is the highest. For example, if they have a main office and their headquarters is actually in New York, but they have small branches in all over the world, you're not going to go to the main building in New York. No, you're going to find the smallest one where their security is the least hardest, and try to get your access through there. So an attacker would pick the least secure remote location. So what's scary about the IoT, SCADA, and industrial control things is that if you actually look closely into IoT search engines, I'm not going to mention them, but the search engines out there, you actually know, and you know what you're looking for. I'm sure you're going to be able to see panels and screens like this that some of these devices, which is scary enough, such as, well, for example, Colonial Systems. They had remotely accessible things. So it happens, it really happens. And these are the things that actually should be looking into and taking care of. So here's a common skill set and tools required for each of the different aspects. So you got cyber, you got physical, and you got social. For cyber or pen testing, you have to have really good knowledge on networking, on the protocols such as FTP, HTTP. You got to know your protocols very well. You got to know web applications. You got to know the commonly tools and platforms that are used for web applications. You got to know about databases, MySQL. You got to know about programming. Personally, I know one of the strongest ones that I know is Python. I'm not a developer, but you still have to have at least some sort of a level of understanding that you can actually, even though you don't know how to code in something, but once you read it, you're able to determine what exactly it's doing. Because God forbid, for example, you're trying to do a pen test engagement, you download a tool from GitHub, and it turns out you have no idea what it's doing, and you think you're using it for one thing. Next thing you know, an attacker actually compromised your machine. You got to know different cloud architectures, AWS, Azure, containers, not really, a little bit of Dockers. You got to know very well about command and control servers. There's a lot of them out there. A couple of them are actually enterprise. A lot of them are free. You got to know about phishing. One of the common things done by pen testers due to the limited time constraint that you have when doing an engagement, you got to know about vulnerability scanning, exploiting if you find something that you can actually attack, Active Directory, that's a must, and different kinds of servers. So if you have a file server, if you have a database server, and whatnot. So now for the physical aspects, you got to know about lock picking, you got to know about lock bypassing, the differences between a pin tumbler and a wafer lock, tubular locks. You got to know about elevator keys. There's actually different kinds of brands of elevators. If you search online, you can actually find the default keys for the elevators, which is pretty cool if you're trying to do a physical engagement. Let's say you walk into building that you're trying to do a physical engagement, and it turns out that the floor that you're trying to reach has an RFID control, and you don't have an RFID to actually get in. But if you have the elevator key for the elevator, you can just pop it open and override the controls and just get to whatever floor you're actually trying to go. You have the alarms and cameras. You gotta know how to actually bypass them or hack them. You have RFID and access controls, which is pretty cool if you actually have the Proxmark. You have the wireless attacks, such as when you're using, for example, the Wi-Fi pineapple. You can compromise the building, the Wi-Fi from the building or the company if you're even without actually having to step a foot inside of the premises. You have the implant devices, such as the ESP key. You got the rubber ducky. You got the Hack5, the key crock, which is pretty cool. You have building entry points. You want to do a lot of reconnaissance into the building that you're actually trying to get into. You want to survey the site. You want to see if there's cameras that have dead zones. You want to see if they have fire escapes. Try to go through the fire escapes, not the main entrance. You might want to also find out about the landlord of the building, if the building has people on staff doing maintenance, that they might be working overnight. And one thing common that you'll see is also shared office spaces. Those are actually a lot easier to get into than if the company owns the main building. So for the social aspect, you gotta be very, very, very well versed in your OSINT and doing reconnaissance online on anything regarding the company. Being able to do a third-party supply chain OSINT as well, as in any provider of the company as well. One time I had an engagement that I actually had to do reconnaissance on who was the MSP of that company. You got to learn about body language, wardrobing. You got to address accordingly depending on the area that you're actually trying to get into. For example, if you want to get into a building where they usually wear a suit and tie and whatnot, you're not going to be wearing a t-shirt and shorts. For example, if a security guard walks by and sees you in a suit and tie trying to get into a building, you can come up with an excuse. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm trying to get in. I just lost my key. I'm an employee here, and make up a good pretext, and you might be able to get in. You gotta have vision skills when actually doing phishing over the phone, surveillance skills. If you actually pay attention to a lot of things, there's a lot of things that can actually help you to gain more insight into the company and the employees. Photography, you gotta know how to take pictures for your reporting and also for your own reconnaissance as well. Empathy with the employees, you gotta find a way to communicate with them, to relate with them. Another thing with social is that you have to have a fake online personas, fake aliases, because just in case you never know when someone might be looking you up with the name that you're making up. So you want to have that created just in case they try to find you. Also, another thing that can help with fake online personas is that, for example, if you have an alias and you're trying to target a company, one way to gain access, for example, you could search for the company into their human resources department. You would see that they're hiring for whatever position. So you create a fake online persona with job requirements that would fulfill, with the skills that would fill the job requirements that they have. So even though you might or might not land an opportunity with having an interview with HR, but if you do, for example, chances are they're going to bring you into the building. You can have a walk around, see what actually looks on the inside. It helps with the engagement. And then one important skill is, of course, this actually applies for all of them, is report writing. You got to be able to write a good report with specifically all your findings, how you find it, how you can replicate what you found, and how to mitigate whatever you found. So within physical tools, you'll have, this is a fun subject for me. I have so many tools. I mean, I have well over 10 different kinds of lockpicks and locks laying around all over the place. So you have on the top left, we see here the Proxmark, which is for cloning RFID badges. That's a pretty cool device. A lot of people say, oh yeah, it's not worth it due to the fact that you have to be within a couple of centimeters of the person. Well, think about it this way. Let's say it's a Friday at noon. It's a payday. So everybody, has money, whatever. Everybody's hungry, and you go to one of these supermarkets, for example, I believe it's the Bravo, that have like a food court, and you got people going through these areas when they're serving food and whatever. You'll literally see them packed all over each other, and they usually have a badge on the side or on the front. All you have to do is just walk up to them really close. They're just paying attention to their food, and just close the badge. It literally takes a couple of seconds, even less than that. So you have the USB implants, for example, the USB rubber ducky, which is pretty cool. It's a tool that you plug it into USB and it'll run a script. You also have the Wi-Fi pineapple, which is for pen testing and doing wireless security audits. You have your lockpicking tools. You have the ESP, which is a pretty cool device for RFID. So another approach is that instead of actually cloning the RFID badge, you take this little device, which is the side of a postcard, and implant it on the reader of the RFID badge on the building, and just leave it there and follow up a day later, and you can actually pull off all the credentials that are actually scanned. You can replicate those credentials and just gain access to the building that you're going into. You can also use in buildings that have RFID sensors and prox marks and whatnot to get in. Usually they have a sensor for you to exit the building, which can also be bypassed with a can of compressed air. Those sensors, it would usually detect whenever there's a change of temperature in the sensor approaching the door, so it will actually unlock the door. I have a video which I'm not able to show here publicly, but if you ask me, I can show it to you on how actually you can bypass these. You have Slim Jims, you have the under the door tools, which here's a demonstration of how you actually prop it under the door, pull on the handle, and then you can open the door. Here I've added a couple of links on where you can actually purchase a lot of these tools. This is not a paid sponsorship or anything. Personally, I've spent my personal money into all of these tools. And besides the actual tools is actually the technique as well. On the left-hand side, there's a couple links for the channels for the lockpicking lawyer, which he actually has a lot of videos on lockpicking, opening locks, and different kinds of locks, and how you can attack and approach each. Deviant Olaf, which is a well-known red team operator, speaker at DEF CON. He's well-known in the industry. Another YouTube channel for lockpicking is Bossy and Bill. And then finally, you have the Not So Civil Engineer. Those are four that I strongly recommend looking into, because you can actually definitely learn from them. You also have a tool, which is I always forget the acronyms. It's the Open Organization of Lockpickers. There you go. And there you can find some resources if you want to get into lockpicking. For social engineering, there isn't really much resources out there for you to learn besides a couple of books. For example, the one from Chris Haggerty, which I recommend, which is Social Engineering, the Art of Human Hacking. You can actually learn a lot from his book, and also checking out socialengineer.org. Also, in Tool US Deviant, this is one thing that I actually want to recommend if you want to get into lockpicking. You can check out that site. They actually have a couple of gives and explainers on how pin tumblers work and whatnot. It's a great resource for if you want to learn and get into lockpicking, which is a requirement for red team operators. So moving on to social engineering. So social engineering doesn't have much requirements or much tools. One of the things that I do recommend, for example, if you want to get into social engineering, things that I would recommend getting is a hard hat. Could be a badge cloner, so you can create your own badges at house, and a clipboard. Usually with these three things, you can get into pretty much almost anywhere by impersonating someone. Also creating online personas, online aliases. Let's say you want to get into building, to give you an idea, for example, a medical facility. If you want to get into there, all you have to do is some light OSINT on what their badges look like. You create a fake badge, create an online alias, and you're an auditor, whatever. Walk in with a clipboard, looking all professional. Heck, sometimes if you actually go into places such as Goodwill, turns out you might be able to find polos or t-shirts from the company that you're actually trying to target, which would actually help you social engineer your way in. I mean, if you go to Goodwill, I swear you can actually find an AT&T polo in there somewhere for just $5, if that. If by any chance you're trying to get a polo or a t-shirt of the company you're trying to social engineer your way in, and you can't find it at Goodwill, another resource is actually the swap shops. You can actually go there for 10, 20, maybe 15 bucks sometimes. You can actually have your custom polo of the company that you're trying to get into. All you need is pretty much their logo, which you can find online. And places like the swap shop, they're not gonna ask you, hey, do you work at this company? No, they'll just, you know, make the polo or t-shirt for you. So it's really easy to social engineer your way into companies, and this is something I should be taking a look at, be on the lookout for. And not only that, think about it this way: you're supporting your local business and swap shops. You know, be a good person by purchasing at Goodwill. So let's create a sample. We're going to be fishing Mr. John Doe. So we do some reconnaissance online on Mr. Doe. He's a C-level executive. Turns out he's like my brother-in-law, has literally no social media whatsoever. Well, let's say he's into sports. He's a Heats fan. How did you find out that? Well, it turns out you were doing reconnaissances into the building where he works at, you recognize who he was and his vehicle, and it turns out that on his vehicle he had a custom Heats license plate holder. That way you already know he's into sports. You know, you could use the Heats as an excuse to elaborate a phishing email with some attachments like, hey, here's you were included into your wife included you into this raffle. Here's some free Heat tickets that you just won. You know, that's one way of phishing. If he's married, you can actually do OSINT and social engineering into his wife. Chances are, if you're able to phish her, then you can use her credentials and her email to actually phish him. Chances are he's not gonna deny an email and not open an email from any relative or family members and whatnot. So another option is actually doing social media reconnaissance on his wife, on any other family members, on if they have kids, on teenagers as well. I mean, it is scary, but it is something that it is a possibility. When you're red teaming, there's no strings attached. Like whatever an attacker can do, you gotta think of it as well. You gotta consider it as a possibility. Like, hey, would an attacker do this? Chances are they will. I mean, they don't care that your wife is your wife or your kids, whatever. They just want to hack you. They just want to get in. They don't care. No strings attached, you know. So a lot of questions that I get often, well, not that often, is that if anybody can be a red teamer besides pen testing. So in my answer is yes, anybody can be a red teamer. I mean, for example, in physical pen testing, sometimes you'll encounter people that have military background, that are in the lock sport community, that they're into bypassing and opening locks and whatnot. A lot of the times they might not have the requirements or the skills to be a cyber pen tester, but they still can be part of a red teamer. I mean, if you already have a couple of members that are actually taking care of the tech side of aspects, and they're good with physical stuff, with locks and whatnot, sure, of course, they can be a red teamer, why not? And same applies for social engineering. A lot of people think that you need like a psychology degree or something, or be able to mentally hack people. That's not true. You gotta be a trustworthy person, you know, learn a lot about empathy, learn about reading people, humans, and be able to trick your way in. You know, it's all skills and practice. One thing that I like to do that actually, one skill that I learned from Chris HackMiami is that, for example, whenever you're going out and you're going into a restaurant, for example, you want to take a quick view of everybody sitting, eating, what they're wearing, and within a couple of minutes, try to see if you can pinpoint what everybody was wearing and whatnot. It helps with memory skills. That way, when, for example, you're talking to someone and you're social engineering them, and you see them one day and you talk about sports or whatever, 2-3 days later, if you see them again, you actually remember what you talked about and whatnot, and you can follow up on that. Another thing is that when creating online aliases, when you're using your name, this is an internal tip. When you're using your name, try to use your own personal name, and just change your last name. Because for example, if your name is David, but you create an online alias that says John Doe, and you're social engineering your way into the building, and turns out that person actually looked you up in LinkedIn and then saw you on the streets a couple of days ago, they're going to be yelling on the street, "Hey, John Doe, John Doe," and you're not going to remember that it's actually you that they're calling. So at least use your first name, just change out the last name. That's a little tip for social engineering there. So another thing to do is once you're good at these, how do you get even better? If you're pen testing, keep up with your tools and exploits. Be involved in the InfoSec community and all the Discord groups, DEF CON, RedTeam, HackMiami. Practice all the time. Go consistently on Try Hack Me. Go consistently on Hack the Box. Whenever there's a new exploit release, try to get a copy of it, try to replicate it, and practice all the time. And same as with lock picking, it's literally no different. There's locks that are easy to pick. You got, for example, those master locks that you can actually pick up at Home Depot for a couple of dollars. Those you can pick within a couple of minutes. If it gets harder, then find a harder lock and improve. You always have to keep on practicing your lock picking. There's always different locks, different tools and techniques, and also with your implants as well. Those are improving all the time. For example, if you've been a Hack5 fan such as me, you've noticed that the Wi-Fi pineapple has been improving over the years, and keep up to date on your implants and whatnot. For OSINT, there isn't much that you need to be taking care of. Just practice your deceits with friends and family members just for the heck of it. And I mean, they'll understand. Just tell them, hey, I'm just practicing this with you. You want to invest into props. One of the most expensive things for social engineering, I think, is a badge maker. The cheapest you can find on eBay will probably go around $600, give or take. It is quite expensive, but it's a one-time investment. And the uniforms you can find literally for just a couple of dollars. Like I mentioned, you just go to Goodwill, you'll find for $5, $10 at most. You can find a polo or a t-shirt with the logo of the company that you're trying to get into. And if not, you can just go to your swap shop and have it made there. So another thing you want to do with OSINT is to actually maintain your aliases. Whenever you create an online profile, every once in a while you want to go into those profiles, post something related to the background of that aliases, just to keep it active. You're doing good with that online profile if every once in a while you'll see a recruiter actually reach out to you. That way okay, this alias is good, So to sum it up, yeah, any questions?
Hi, my name is Srinivas. Questions about what are some of the monitoring tools for online, for let's say there's a business, right? And the business has applications, right? And you would want to do pen testing, you want to, what kind of pen testing tools, I mean, from the pen testing perspective, and also figuring out, like from the red team perspective, how do you find out these that has been a phishing attack or something like that? Can you chime in all the some tools that you know of? Thank you.
For phishing, one common one is Kingfisher. That's one of them, and you also have the social engineering toolkit. That's another one. And then there's a few other proprietary that I'm not allowed to mention here. But the social engineering toolkit by SET by Dave Kennedy and Trusted Sec, that's a really good one. And Kingfisher as well, which is an open source one. They're both open source. You don't have to pay anything for them.
Thank you. And how about for that's from pen testing perspective, but from the red team perspective, how do you find these attacks, right? In terms of applications and servers and services and stuff like that.
By doing reconnaissance into the company. Do reconnaissance into the company, see what's running on their network, see if they're using mobile applications, if they're using web applications. You can find out, for example, their website, what it's running by using an add-on called the Wapalizer. You can find out the backend code, libraries, and whatnot. And from there, you can find out more on what's actually running on their network.
Here's a question from Riley. He's asking about FIDO security keys. What's your opinion on them?
Are those the same as? No, I'm not. To be honest, I'm not familiar. I'm not that familiar with the FIDO security keys.
Well, it's a new security two-factor authentication that they're using now, where it's kind of like using a double key encryption on like a certificate, where you actually keep a physical security key that can pair to your phone, or you can push it over Bluetooth or put it in USB. That will be challenged with challenge from, say, said server, like an email server, to protect against phishing, but they're saying you can also use it to protect physical hardware as well, and how that might play into, some sort of pen testing.
So regarding pen testing, that's pretty much almost impossible to bypass if you have those in place. Personally, I'm not going to die. I'm actually a big fan of YubiKey. I've been using YubiKey for the last couple of years, and fantastic product. I love it. So for the pen testing side, I dare to say, I mean, nothing is impossible, but it's almost impossible to bypass that. But when you're doing physical engagement, you'd be surprised. There's a high percentage chance that you'll find the actual key inside of a drawer in the office of a facility that you gain access to.
Compromising the actual key would probably be the weakness.
You're actually storing the device right on the desk next to whatever it is you're protecting. It makes no sense if you store it right there.
Right. It's sort of it just shifts the goal, but once you get it,
you'd be surprised the kind of things that I've encountered when doing a physical engagement. Like, I've seen packets of blank checks. I've seen driver licenses. I've seen passports. I've seen containers with old food. I mean, you can find anything that you can think that is in an office environment, you will find it.
Excellent presentation. Any more questions, guys? Any more questions?
Yes, one more question. David, where are you located?
In Florida, Hollywood, Florida.
Hollywood, Florida. All right, thank you.
Yeah. But for red teaming, there's no limit. Like, if I'm asked to go to another country to do a red team engagement, I'm more than willing to, because it is a requirement of the test.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you soon, July 24th. And join us at Discord. Start preparing for DEF CON. And hopefully we'll meet each other and do some cool stuff. Thank you again.